Well, hello, everyone. As you know, this is our Aging and Spirituality podcast, and our goal every week is to help all of you experience your true inner potential and be open to all that you can be as you pass certain ages. And I'm Chris Jensen,
I'm Kathy Lee Taylor. Hi, everyone.
and we have something very special today. We want to introduce you to Dr. Joseph Antoun, and he is the CEO of L-Nutra. And I would like to tell you a little bit about his background, and that we'll let him tell us a little more about it. But uh, been a very long time expert in the field of longevity, and he's dedicated to enhancing the human lifespan through nutritional technology. He's been the CEO of L-Nutra for over 7 years, and his goal is to help people find optimum in healthcare. And he has a varied background. He's studied in health policy at Harvard, public health at Johns Hopkins, medicine and biological sciences at St. Joseph University, and he has a PhD in Mediterranean and Middle Eastern studies. And this varied background, combined with his medical experience, really gave him a understanding of a lot of different factors that influence human health and longevity. And it kind of laid the foundation for his work at L-Nutra. And this is where he led the development of Prolon, which is the first clinically tested fasting mimicking diet. And the idea of this is to make fasting a little more accessible, I think. So welcome.
Thank you, Chris. Thank you, Kathy. Um,
Welcome.
Seems you know me better than I know myself. That was a very sharp, crisp, introduction. And I'm happy to. Hey, what I want to hope for today is to change somebody's life in a pretty significant way. So
In a
let's
healthy
try
way.
to do that.
Yeah,
That's
that's
great. That
fantastic.
touches our hearts for sure. That's because that's always our goal. So,
Yes.
well, let's start off with I would like to ask, most people have probably heard that fasting is good for your health, but it can be a challenge for many people and maybe even scary. And most of us don't really know why it works. So can you just tell us a little bit about how fasting triggers cellular protection and rejuvenation pathways?
Yeah. Well, there's two types of fasting, and there's what we call intermittent fasting, and there's what we call prolonged fasting. Intermittent fasting is any fast between 0 hours and 2 days. And everything beyond 2 days is called prolonged fasting. So
Oh,
why
interesting.
why the 2 days? And when you say intermittent fasting, most people think it's skipping breakfast and the 16 hours. But
Right. Right. That's
it,
what I've heard.
yeah, it's actually 0 hour to all the way to 2 days. And why we divide fasting into these two? Because the way the body copes with fasting changes after day two. So let's go through this. And to make it easy on everyone, I'm gonna compare the body fasting to, say, a company that has no revenues, right?
Mhm.
I'll describe, say you're Chris and Kathy, you have a company, you need $1 million in revenue. And suddenly I say, sorry guys, no more money coming to you. And you'll be like, hey, we do have some money in our checking account. So the first few hours of fasting, the body goes and uses glycogen. Glycogens are reserved, like carbohydrates reserved in the muscle and the liver and different organs. So you go and you use the glycogen very fast as a compensation for the deficit. Go back to the company example. It's like, okay, I'm using my checking accounts now. Still, we're going longer and there's no money. You're going to say, I'm going to use my savings account now. And the body goes to fat. So around the after 15 hours, all the way to day one, the body goes to the fat and starts breaking down fat into what we call ketones. And those ketones, they go everywhere in the body to feed the body, especially the brain. And this is a defense mechanism to stay up and not faint when you fast, so that you go and you find the next fruit and vegetable, as we say. So you're tapping into your savings account, and now day one is done, and you still have no revenues. What are you going to do? You're going to ask the bank for a loan. So on day two of fasting, you go to the liver and you tell the liver, "Hey, can you dump calories amongst from your reserves in your blood in the blood?" We call that neoglucogenesis, generating new glucose. So Now you ask for a credit from the bank, and that's day two. So day one and day two, you tap into the reserve. Checking account, glycogen, savings account, fat, and then you ask for a loan from the liver. And so it's a metabolic response to fasting. It's the body going and finding reserves, and this is why intermittent fasting people love it for weight loss. So now you cross day two, and the body's saying, "Hey, remember you're the head of a company, and you consumed all your cash. What you gonna do? You don't have any more cash. You're gonna go and say, I'm gonna restructure my company. I'm gonna cut all the unnecessary costs, my travel, extra travel, the future investments, etc. And I'm gonna start fixing everything going wrong. If I'm not selling because of the sales team, because of marketing, because of operations, you're gonna try to optimize everything to survive. It's a survival stress reaction. The body does the same thing. When you cross day two, the body tells the cells, hey, we're going to die unless you restructure. Find every intracellular, reserve that you can consume and reshape and be at your best because we're going to have to survive. And that's the biggest key. This is why fasting, literally in the last 10 years, from only religious people doing it all the way now to 7% of the US population practice some type of fasting. It's the number one diet.
Yeah.
So because of this rejuvenation happening in the cells, combined with you losing weight, right? If you look at the US, the number one disease in the US is what is obesity and overweight. And so fasting helps you reverse that. And the number two is, it's aging. All of us, we age, but it's now you're rejuvenating your cells and you're preventing, age-related health conditions. So that cellular rejuvenation, we call it autophagy, self-eat, self-rejuvenate. It won the Nobel Prize in Medicine in 2016, and this is why fasting exploded after that. Now, the biggest caveat there is this is why I wanted to start with dividing fasting into two periods. Most people thought that if you skip breakfast, you do the 16-hour fast, and then you eat within 8 hours window, you're getting the rejuvenation, you're getting autophagy. This is why everyone started practicing intermittent fasting after the Nobel Prize, thinking that they're rejuvenating their cells if they skip breakfast. And that doesn't happen because you still have a lot of reserves. Go back to the company example. Hey, if you tap a little bit into your checking account, you're not going to go restructure the company. You still have the savings account, you still have the loans you can get. There's not enough stress to rejuvenate the cells if you skip breakfast. You still have a lot of reserves in the body to tap into. That's a big myth that a lot of people should realize. And this is behind the existence of our company. We've at L-Nutra, L is for longevity, dash nutrition. So longevity through nutrition. We believe that food is the only product we consume every day of our life. So why we haven't invested so much in turning food as medicine and food as an asset for longevity, right? This is, it's the only pill we consume every day of our life, the day we're born to the day we die, 3 to 5 times per day. Imagine. And then we go put billions in extra pills and billions in whatever, and it's food. Food should be the source of medicine and the source of longevity. So we started studying food and the absence of food fasting for 25 years. And we partnered with 18 universities, Stanford, USC, UCLA. We said, we're going to put the first true science behind fasting and nutrition. And we discovered that you have to spend 2 or 3 days without food to tap into autophagy, right? So after day two, you just start to rejuvenating the cells, but you're going to need 2, 3 more days to rejuvenate. Literally, you have 37 trillion cells on average we have. Each one of us, 37 trillion. So to rejuvenate the cells, you need 2 or 3 days. So to get into rejuvenation 2 days, plus another 3 days, 5 days of fasting was ideal to lose weight and rejuvenate the cells. Now, we studied 5 days of fasting. In mice, it's three to 4 days because they have a fast metabolism. And it was helping them stay healthy long. It was reversing diabetes. It was reversing cancer. It was helping with Alzheimer's. So the results were amazing. And we go to human trials. We partnered with Mayo Clinic and we said, let's test 5 days of water fast on humans. What happened? Especially we started with cancer patients. And nobody wanted to fast, obviously. No CEO of any company want to go with no funds, for a long period. Nobody wants to do that. It's too difficult, it's too risky, etc. And this is how we moved from water fast to putting science and research to devise a food program. You called it Prolon, the fasting mimicking diet. The entire essence to create and develop a fasting mimicking nutrition was to help people consume food for 5 days while keeping the same fasting effects on the cells and keeping the rejuvenation happening from the cells. That's the entire essence why we came up with a fasting mimicking diet. We were a water fasting company, and then we said, okay, people cannot do safely a 5-day water fast. A company going with no money is also at risk. You're going to lose your employees, the best employees. You're going to not be able to order your supplies. So water fast has a lot of positive, but has a lot of negatives. People feel tired, headaches, etc. So this is where we stepped in. We went to actually the US government, we went to the NIH. We said, can you fund us to develop a first ever special formulation that mimics the benefits of fasting on the cell? And the NIH gave our research lab at USC $20 million to develop the fasting mimicking diet. We end up raising 100 million on top of it, and we spent $48 million, $48 million to develop Prolon and tested now in 40 clinical trials. It's the most tested nutrition formulation today. And we showed that we can mimic the benefits of fasting while taking the side effects. So now you're eating for 5 days, plant-based, healthy, premium ingredients, non-GMO, gluten-free, all the healthy ingredients, all the health checks that you want there. On top of that, it's a special formulation that tricks the cells that they're still in fasting. So basically, we had to study how a cell recognizes food and try to go around the radars of food. So the cell is seeing nutrients, but is not registering that it's getting fed, and therefore it stays in a fasting mode. It's a long answer, but it's needed because there's a lot of
there's so many parts of it.
Yeah.
But you just touched on the last part that you just touched on is what I'm really, my mind wants to know the answer to, and that's, I think it's your founder, Dr. Longo, was the person that was credited with discovering how cells sense food.
Yes.
What in the heck does that mean? How does cells sense food?
Yeah.
And then like, okay, what is, so that means that if cell sense food, your program allows the body to feel like you're eating and you feel healthy. You feel, you know what I'm saying? You are supposed to feel healthy when you're eating this food. And so you're not hungry. You're not like trying to binge. You're not trying to take stuff that's not good for you. So how does that work? How do cells sense food, and how did you mimic that?
Yeah. So that's the core of the technology. We started by studying how, first, when you eat, how does the blood system tell the body that there's food, right? So at the systemic level, before we go to the cells,
Right.
So at the systemic level, every time you eat carbs, insulin increases. Insulin
Right.
tells the body it's a growth factor. It moves glucose from the blood to the cells. It tells the cell, hey, you're well fed, you can grow. So that's the first signal that we had to not spike with our food. So we devised a food, and there's a lot of secrets and a lot of, again, tens of millions invested, but the first objective was not to spike insulin. So that the body is
That's the first thing your food does
there's
not
some
do.
glucose, there's some
Okay.
glucose trickling into the blood, but it's
Okay.
not high and fast enough. It's not high and fast enough for insulin to spike. Same
Okay.
thing when you eat proteins, insulin-like growth factor, IGF, increase. Every time we eat protein, IGF increase. And it's called insulin-like growth factor. Growth factor that is like insulin. The other goal was to devise a formulation that is, and this is where the proteins, a lot of them come from academia, from nuts. Nuts have a very good ratio of carbs, complex carbs, so you don't spike insulin, and plant-based sources of protein that do not spike IGF. So on a systemic level now, the blood is seeing some proteins coming in, seeing some carbs coming in, but is not spiking the signals, the hormones of growth, which is insulin and IGF.
Gotcha.
Then on the cellular level, we went to the cells and we looked at how do proteins and carbs get processed, right? What are the radars that trickle those inside? And the proteins go through the TOR pathways, we call it TOR pathways, and the carbs go through PKA and the RAS pathways. So we devised a diet and we started measuring to which level these receptors will tell the cell, I'm satisfied, we're not fasting. And we went right below those levels. And we also have other ingredients that go outside of these receptors. So we looked at the nutrient sensing pathways, the TOR pathway, the PK, and the RAS pathways. We looked at which level gets them satisfied. We go below that level, and we have other ingredients that go around them. They don't get through them. So now we're mimicking fasting at the blood level, at the cellular level, and it's no chemicals, no artificial. It's one of the healthiest things you can put in your body. Plant-based, clean, non-GMO, lactose-free, soy-free. This is what took us 2 decades. And
Question about proteins, because I think most people don't see proteins as something that spikes insulin. I mean, we all know about carbs,
an
but
insulin-like growth factor, IGF. It's called IGF. The proteins spike IGF, not insulin.
okay.
Not insulin,
It's
so
a
you don't get
it's an
that. Oh,
insulin-like growth factor.
Yeah, I saw that in your material, and I wasn't sure what you mean by that.
Yeah, it's very important. I really would hope to come back to just talk about proteins because above age 60,
Mhm.
it's so important to know which level of proteins to consider because protein accelerate aging. This is another bomb I'm going to explore today. Right? The first one, intermittent fasting, does not rejuvenate your cells. You got to go to prolonged fasting. This is why you got to do it with fasting mimicking diet and Prolon.
okay.
Prolon, Prolon, is the right way to fast to get your rejuvenation. The second bomb today is the level of protein should be very carefully balanced because protein again increases IGF. It's an insulin-like growth factor, right? And a lot of proteins push the body to age and increase the rate of cancer. There's a perfect correlation. We published that multiple times between the rate of IGF
Mhm.
and protein consumption and cancer. Perfect correlation. Actually, if you look at the supply chain of protein and the price of proteins historically, and you correlate that with cancer cases, there's a very high correlation.
Yeah.
Because think about it, proteins are a great push for growth, right? They're great sources. The cells love the proteins, right? This is why there's all this positive marketing around protein, because cells love them. It's a great ingredient for growth. You want to grow muscle, you eat high proteins, right? But you're growing your rate of aging as well. We only grow forward, right? We only go forward the more you push the body. This is why the only proven method to live longer scientifically is calorie restriction. The less you spike insulin, the less you spike IGF, the less the body is aging, right? We eat, remember, 3 to 5 times per day. If every meal we have high carbs, high protein, that's the definition of a average American diet is high carbs, high proteins.
Protein, yeah.
And every day we're pushing faster to age. This is why we're hitting obesity very, very early in our society, and this is why we're getting cancer early now and more prevalent, and Alzheimer's and cardiovascular disease and diabetes. And
Wow.
look at centenarians, people who live 100 and beyond, they're not obese. They were never obese. They actually were doing certain fasting. They were on a very balanced calorie restrictive diet, and they look thin and healthy. And because every day of their life, they were not accelerating the rate of aging with food. And so this is a big myth because there's a lot of hundreds of millions of dollars historically went behind the protein marketing. People, oh, carbs are bad. You get diabetes, just go and consume proteins. And we did that, and still the rate of cancer and everything's going because proteins and carbs are both boosters for aging. And the more you consume from them, the more you age fast. So between age 40 and 65, you want to be very careful about how much protein and carbs you consume because this
Wow.
is where you accelerate aging the fastest. Now, after age 65, the rate of absorption of protein decrease, the rate of cancer happening in the body decrease because the cells are too old to replicate and do the mistake in replication becomes cancerous. So
Yeah.
after 65, you go back and you increase the protein intake by a good 10-20% to just protect the muscle, protect it through absorption of protein and compensate for that lack of absorption. But in both cases, you should not go high on protein because it just accelerates your aging.
Okay, now you're freaking me out. I eat too much protein. What about athletes? Is that true for people that are like serious exercisers too? Have you seen that with
Great
athletes?
questions. Hey, you know that the big bodybuilders, right, go to the extreme, right? The guys who consume proteins every day,
The
the
big keto
bodybuilders.
guys and the protein builders, and yeah.
Yeah. So you know that they die. This is data and facts. They die. They lose 3 to 7 years on their life expectancy versus the average population.
Wow.
Yeah. Do you want to? This is why Arnold Schwarzenegger turned fast into V. I don't know if you watched The Game Changer. It was the Netflix most watched
Mm.
Game Changer is called most watched documentary. All these big athletes used to consume high levels of animal source of protein because animal source spike IGF even further.
Of
They
course, yeah.
turned into vegan sources of protein because vegan proteins spike IGF a little bit less. And now they're going on a low level of proteins. If you watch Ronnie Coleman, the biggest one, I mean, you look at him at age 55, you think he's 75. Arnold Schwarzenegger at age 55 was looking like 70 and 75.
Yeah, he was.
We
Yeah.
know that.
Yeah.
We know that big bodybuilders die earlier than other, and they blame, oh, because they use hormones, they use growth. Yes, but the biggest growth factor they're using every 6 hours is
It's
the
protein.
Mm.
You're freaking me out. Now I gotta change my diet. I used to playing tennis so I can eat as much protein as I want. And I could eat keto all day long, so now I gotta figure it out.
and I'll give you another proof. If the more you eat proteins, if the theory is true, then you would be super fit and super muscular because every day you're eating that
And
food.
look 20 years younger.
Yes. And that's not the case.
That's not the case.
That's not the
Yeah.
case. There's a value, so you should eat per day 0.7 to 0.8 grams of protein per
We're
pound.
writing this down.
Per pound. 0.7 to 0.8 is what you should eat
Per pound.
per pound. This
How
is
much I weigh.
sorry,
Okay.
per kilo, sorry, per kilo,
Per kilo.
which
Okay.
is
Kilo.
which is
Okay.
0.3, which is 0.3 to 0.35 per pound.
Okay.
So when you cross, there's two situations where you consume a little bit more. When you cross age 65, you go 10-15% higher because you're absorbing less the proteins.
Hmm.
Or if you're an athlete and your goal is just to performance and you want to increase muscle mass, you have a short-term goal, you're willing to sacrifice a little bit on longevity, and you have that short-term goal, then you can go 10-15% more. But the problem, they tell you should consume 1 gram and 2 grams and 1.5 and 1.6, and you're doing this every day, but you're not becoming an Arnold Schwarzenegger after 6 months. You're taking years and years and years, and that's never happening. So if it was the marginal decrease in utility of increasing protein intake is very sharp. Once you cross that 1.2 gram, it's just useless to add more. You're just accelerating aging without growing your muscle.
Wow.
Yeah, he's pointing out the reality, and I like to live in my fantasy that it is happening. It is happening. So,
Well, I think we've all been, a lot of us who are into health, been kind of low carb for a while. But on the other side of the coin, that meant we're eating a lot of protein.
Yeah, that's the big marketing. That's the big. Have they ever showed you an article, a science? This is why we exist. What I love about the company, and is why I, as a CEO, am an MD, PhD in Harvard, and we talk clinical trials and science, is we're revealing, and this is an entire mission of our company. We're putting true science, the level that you put behind medicine, and this is why we get published in Nature. We have 7 articles in Nature. Nature is the #1 science journal of the world. We have 6 articles in Cell, the #2 science journal of the world. All these are medical, big randomized clinical trials. The first time in history, again, this is what took me off medicine and brought me to nutrition, is like, that's the true drug or the true poison. And it has been a poison. We keep evolving as a society, but we keep going backwards in health. We're getting sicker, younger, we're dying younger. We just crossed, what, $3 trillion in expenditure per year in healthcare, and we lost 0.5 years. In 2023, we lost 0.5 years on our lifespan. Can you believe that?
Yeah.
And,
yeah, that's great.
because we keep doing the wrong thing, we're following influencers, people who write books left and right. They change their mind after they see the science. One day they want us to go keto, one day they want us to go carnivore. I mean, if you want to die fast, go carnivore. The meat is the #1 spiker of IGF. You'll age super fast and you'll die super, I mean, it's just crazy. And then, but the science we do follows 5 pillars. We do preclinical trials, we do human trials, we study centenaries. It's important to study people who live 100 and beyond. What were they doing? They were eating. They were never eating steak. They were eating stews, right? In the longevity zones and the blue zones, they're eating stew. So it's a lot of vegetables and legumes and nuts, and they would add meat to it. They would add fish to it most of the time, right? Humanity, if you think about it, we lived around rivers. We lived
Yeah.
where there was water. It was a river, and it was a lot of green and grass and trees around the rivers. We didn't live hunting animals. We didn't live in by the ocean. You cannot drink the ocean water. We lived around rivers. And around river, there's a lot of fruits and vegetables, and you can fish. So it's a pescatarian slash Mediterranean diet. We never ate, meat all the
Oh,
time.
that brings up a great question for me. Chris, I hope you're okay if I just butt in
Yeah,
here.
go.
Because it's probably her turn, but this question is driving me crazy because I've recently been researching the effects of inflammation in the body when the omega-6 levels are much higher than the omega-3 levels. I got blood tested for it and found out I was like 20 to 1. I was like, oh. So, and ideal being more like 3 to 1 or even 1 to 1 would be nice. So, I've been taking a fatty fish with an olive oil that has like 300 pre-green polyphenols in the oil substance for a couple of months now. And honestly, what happened, and I was telling Chris before we got online, is that I had inflammation in both knees, probably from playing tennis as much as I do. And I had been experiencing AFib. And in the 2 months that I've been on it, I just had a pacemaker check. I had no recorded
Yes.
AFib in that time. Unbelievable.
Yeah.
So that inflammation
Yes.
is what causes the cells
Yes.
to lose their fluidity. So they can't uptake nutrition, right? You can't uptake your nutrition, and you can't let go of toxins in your cells if you have that inflammation and your cells are rigid. So this is very similar to what you're talking about.
Yeah. Inflammation it's one of the main vehicles of aging, inflammation, right?
Yeah,
It's like the engine of the
100%.
car. The more temperature and the stronger, the faster you go towards your end. Inflammation is there's two inflammation. Is inflammation as inflammation, meaning you have autoimmune, you're not eating right, you have allergies, etc. And there's inflammaging, what we call inflammaging, which is the inflammation that naturally comes with aging. And this is due to we call them the old zombie senescent cells. You have some cells are so old, they're not dying, right? And this is what changes the feature of the body. They're not dying, and they're there. And the body, they're not going in apoptosis. They're not getting replaced by younger ones. They're there, they're distorted, they're old, and they start creating inflammation around them. We call those senescent cells. A lot of the anti-aging now, or the longevity drug industry, is looking at how to get rid of those and replace them with younger ones. The senescent cells create inflammation, and we call it inflammation because it comes with aging. And this is what accelerates aging. Actually, aging is not linear. Once you have high concentration of those cells, you start seeing a fast rate of aging. And this is why people will tell you, hey, something happened to me at age 44, 45. And then something happened to me when I just crossed the 64, 65.
Yep.
Right?
100%.
Yeah, and so it's very important at this age to control inflammation and inflammation. And this is what you did. And guess what? Food is the main reason to control all of this. It's starting with the microbiome and leaky gut, right? A lot of the inflammation comes from leaky gut. We're eating a lot of things that are hurting our intestine, and we're leaking. And this is why fasting goes back. When you do Prolon, you're eating healthy, clean, green legumes and vegetable, and you help your cells to heal and stop the leakage.
Yeah.
Then how the way you read your genes, the epigenetic reading is influenced by nutrition. If you don't spike insulin and IGF, also the white blood cells that are excited and they replicate to do inflammation, they slow down their excitement because there's no fuel to fuel them. If you want to stop inflammation, the fastest way to stop inflammation is go on fasting. In the old medical books, fasting was the cure for lupus, for rheumatoid arthritis, because the body does not allow, remember that CEO with no money is not going to allow expenditure. So if you are fasting, you're not going to allow white blood cells to replicate and do attack. You're going to just shut them down because you cannot spend money. You cannot have the engine of the car go fast or heat it if there's no gas in the tank.
I have a question about breast cancer because you brought this up in your website, and 4.5 years ago, I got breast cancer, and I was on bioidentical hormones for quite some time, and I have a very generally healthy diet, and uh, so my holistic doctor that I see was really shocked. But in any case, I was very early when they caught it, and they removed it, and I did the radiation, and that was it. I didn't do the endocrine therapy. They said that, it would be such a minimal difference. I have a nutritionist that I was working with there that I know for a long time. He actually mentioned the Prolon
Yeah,
me. But when he told me about it, I was in the middle of all this,
yeah,
and I was doing the radiation. And by the time I finished the radiation, it was, 6 weeks, and I felt fine, and I stopped doing the hormones. And so I forgot about the fasting. I kind of, I thought I'd been through enough stuff. And
yeah.
so tell me a little bit about the impact there. And also, I saw on your website that there was some paperwork recommending the fasting mimicking diet and hormone therapy. So I know all the doctors said to me, you have to. I was doing the Wiley protocol, which is it was not the synthetic stuff, it was based on soy and yam. But nevertheless, the first thing they said was you have to stop this. And the one oncologist said, "Oh, you got this because you did that." He said, "You're otherwise so healthy." He said, "If you didn't do that, you wouldn't have gotten this."
Yeah,
That's what I was told.
yeah,
So tell me a little bit about that, because I know
yeah.
breast cancer affects a lot of women.
I mean, we're super passionate about this. This is what brought me to this country, right? So the first use of the fasting mimicking diet was for breast cancer. This is the first clinical trial ever that we've
Wow.
done. This is
Wow.
why we started the company actually before longevity.
Oh,
It was
wow.
all about breast cancer. We have now 8 clinical trials on breast cancer and the fasting mimicking diet. We
Wow.
have around 10 patents
Hmm.
on on them. And I don't want to spoil anything, but we're going to show soon that there's a major PCR improvement and overall survival increase with the fasting mimicking. That's going to shock the world. The first nutrition to change PCR and overall survival. So let me tell you why and how.
Wow. Congratulations. That's great.
Yeah, the so when you have cancer, what is cancer? Cancer is a cell that, every cell replicates from time to time when there's a neighboring cell that dies, right? And it does mitosis, we call it, meaning replicate into two. When a cell loses inhibition to stop, it keeps growing. And this is how cancer starts. It's a cell that goes crazy to kind of replicate. It grows fast and then goes everywhere. We call it metastasis. So the problem with the current therapies, the chemotherapy and immune therapy and hormone therapy, and is they're not targeted just towards the cancer because every cell in the body replicates as well, right? So when you do chemo, you kill the cancer because cancer cells, because they replicate fast. Chemo kills cells in replication. So you kill a lot of cancer cells, but you lose hair because hair replicates fast. So it gets killed by chemo. You lose a lot of white blood cells because they replicate fast, the red blood cells. We call them the side effects of chemo because it's like sending an atomic bomb to the body and it kills everything in replication,
Yeah,
right?
100%.
So when you fast before, this is how we started. We started telling people, do the fasting mimicking diet 4 days before and the day of chemotherapy or hormone therapy or other therapies. And the goal was when you fast, the normal cells, they stop replicating, right? As we said, there's no funding, so you stop replicating.
Hmm.
And cancer, by definition, doesn't know how to stop replicating. It's a cell that lost its inhibition. So
Right.
now we separated the normal cells of the body. There's no IGF, there's no insulin, so there's nothing telling the cells to grow. Everything is shutting down, is hibernating. And then
Right.
only cancer is growing. So chemotherapy now kills cancer and spares the side effect on the normal cells. So the first use of the fasting mimicking diet, and this is why probably your doctor told you about it. He wanted you to do it while you were doing the treatment, so you decrease the side effects
Hmm.
of the treatment. The
Yeah, I
second,
only did radiation,
yeah, yeah,
still, I felt fine during it, but I know that it's got to take a toll on the body. I
yeah.
mean, not a
Yeah,
good.
because now the second and the third reason. So the second reason is, again, cancer is a cell that wants to replicate all the time.
Mm,
How it can grow, it needs nutrition, right? So cancer loves protein, cancer loves carbs, and cancer loves the growth factors because everything that feeds it.
mm,
So when you do fasting before the treatment, you're
yeah,
starving cancer. It's like if you run the marathon,
mm,
it's like a cancer cell that needs to grow, and then you undernourish the person running, they're going to collapse.
mm,
So when you underfeed, when you starve the cancer, and cancer doesn't know like the normal cells how to stop replicating, it has to keep going. It goes in a very awkward situation
mm,
and it doesn't have enough nutrients to resist chemotherapy and to find the resistance pathways and to
mm,
save itself. So when chemo comes in on a starved cancer, it kills it to a much bigger extent than a cancer that's healthy, that's full of nutrients, and that
mm,
figured out a way to resist and continue. Because that's if we can save, if we can, if we can keep the biggest problem oncologists face is they cannot cancer resists, right? And then they have to add another one, or there's a lot of escape routes for cancer. When the cancer is undernourished, it doesn't have a lot of it cannot spend calories to find escape routes.
mm,
And the third benefit is rejuvenation of the immune system. You know, when cancer keeps replicating, it loses identity. It becomes like a foreign body within the body. So immunity should attack it. But because this is a chronic phenomenon, immunity gets used to it. When you do the fasting mimicking diet, you flip immune cells fast. And then the new cells, there's a critical mass of new immune cells coming in, and they go and they attack cancer faster than usual. So when we did biopsies
mm,
on cancer of people that did the fasting mimicking diet and also in mice, we see more T cells, more immune cells attack on the cancer. So three benefits of fasting before cancer: starve the cancer so it resists less, protect the normal cells from the side effects, and rejuvenate immunity to better attack cancer.
oh. So let me ask you about the whole diet, because what the nutritionist recommended to me was it was a 5-day fast, basically. So, I mean, tell me more about that. I mean, I know the 5-day fast is part of it, but what's the whole diet like?
Yeah, so you do the 5 days, as we said, 4 days before and the day of the therapy to do the three benefits that we talked about.
Mhm.
Now, when you're done with chemo, the remaining days before the next cycle, you got to eat a diet that does, again, the goal is to undernourish cancer, is
Mhm.
nourish the body, but undernourish cancer. And what you want to do is not to spike insulin. So you want to be on a not a high carb and not a short carb. So you want complex carbs. You want legumes, you want vegetables, you want nuts,
Mhm.
and you want a diet that's also not highly rich in proteins. Protein are the essence of the growth of the cells. If you eat proteins, you know how many oncologists tell you, I don't want to mention the names of the drinks, drink the high protein this, high protein that.
Of course.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
guess who loves those proteins? Guess who needs those proteins? Is the cancer
Yeah.
cells.
Cells,
First
Yeah.
and foremost,
wow,
you're
Wow.
nourishing
that's
and you're
incredible.
you're equipping the cancer to resist. And by the way, the biggest companies that sell those products, they came to buy us, and when they did the diligence, they lost their mind. They're like, whoa,
Wow.
you know, what the hell we're doing in here? And it is
No,
actually what the hell.
they're not going to be happy with your study.
That's the truth. I mean, it's the crazy way today is to give high protein diet to a patient with cancer. Which is the organ in the body that's going to take the protein the most and use it the most? It's the cancer because that's the fastest growing. It loves it. You spike IGF, cancer grows faster. You nourish cancer, cancer is strong. And then you do the next cycle of chemo and you say, oh, you're becoming more resistant.
Wow, my
The
mind.
way why doctors and they're tricked with this and why people take it because they want to they say, oh, my patient is losing weight, I got to nourish them. Well, give them high fat, give them nuts that have a high good fat, not high fat like fries. It's just the good fat. There's in seeds, there's in nuts because that's a source of calories. Give them low protein or normal protein max vegan source because it doesn't spike and the vegan source of protein don't spike IGF and don't over push the cells, and give them a low carb diet. That's the diet that you want to do in between to keep the cancer in check while protecting muscle and protecting the
Wow.
health of the patient.
That's,
No chicken?
this is going to be very helpful to all our folks because it's blowing our minds.
No fun at all. I don't like
But
it.
that's the truth. But that's the truth, right? That's
Okay,
the truth.
okay. All right, it's
It's
the truth.
making
All
sense,
right.
right?
Okay. All
It's
right.
making
So
a lot of sense.
just getting back to our listeners, a lot of women that are thinking about this diet right now, like I
Like,
am,
how
and
am I going to do
what
this?
And
can
you
I
know,
do this?
Kathy, I don't want to
What?
interrupt, but if I mean it's too much information I'm dumping here today. This book by our founder Walter Longo. So by the way, ask ChatGPT, who's the number one longevity nutrition expert in the world. You get Walter
Dr.
Longo.
Longo.
That's the founder
Yeah.
behind our company.
Okay.
And in this book, all what we're talking about for those who feel like this is too much info, I want to go read the science, I want to take my time. It's all summarized in this book called The Longevity Diet.
Wow.
And there's a
Okay.
chapter on cancer, there's a chapter on diabetes, there's a chapter on Alzheimer's, what to eat for every one of those diseases. This was an
Wow.
Amazon bestseller, millions of copies sold. And Dr. Longo is the longevity expert. He's the head of the Longevity Institute at USC,
Wow.
and he is the number one longevity nutrition expert in the world. And
Is it close to the Mediterranean diet?
yeah, so the even when we talk diets, there's different. It depends on the age. It depends on the needs, right? And
Okay.
this is I love that topic. Is the life cycle of what you should eat depending on your age. Again, I hinted
So
at it.
that's it. Okay.
If you're 45, you want to be low protein and okay on carbs because this is where cancer starts. Chris, your cancer started 10, 20 years ago, not today. So everyone's like, oh, last year you did. Cancer takes years to grow, right? I mean, some certain cancers grow pretty fast, but
Right.
to start from stage one. So the most heart attacks
Hmm.
and the ones that kill, right, and the ones that give you AFib and the ones that give you some sequela, they happen between age 45 and 65, not in 90, right? And most cancers start getting formed in the 40s and the 50s. They're getting formed. They get diagnosed at the 50 and the 60, but this is where they get formed. So in this age, we call it the disease formation and a high risk age. You want to make sure you're well checked on protein and the carbs. And this is where you go plant-based or pescatarian slash flexitarian, a little bit of meat. Now you go above age 65, now your body is losing muscle fast. If you're a woman, you're postmenopautic, you're going to lose muscle, your absorption decrease. This is where you go more Mediterranean. You need a little bit more meat. You need a little bit more proteins to compensate for those. And the risk of cancer formation or heart attacks after age 65 and 70 is lower. You don't say my husband died of a heart attack at age 80 or died of cancer at age 80. They died of cancer at 65 and 70 and 55. This is where the acute phases of these incidents happen. You die out of Alzheimer's at age 80. You die out of a frailty and old age at 80s and the 90s. So it's important to tailor these two phases, different nutritional patterns. But yeah, in general, plant-based, pescatarian to get a little bit more fish, and or Mediterranean flexitarian to get a little bit more meat when you cross the 65.
I was 35 when I had heart failure, and it
Yeah.
turned out to be sick sinus node syndrome, which is a rhythmic issue.
Yes.
Is that because I was
But
very
that's not
athletic my
food.
whole
That's not
life?
food. Yeah, they probably have a genetic predisposition or something.
Oh, okay.
This is not food related. It's not your diet.
Okay.
Yeah, yeah. This is
Okay.
these are the exceptions, right?
Okay.
Even yeah, I can talk a lot about cancer. Even, some people get at age 17. It's just the cancer happens. Remember, it's a cell replicating that does a mistake and doesn't stop replicating, right? So even when you're young, your cells are replicating so fast. Well, you still get cancer at young age, but they're young, they don't do a mistake. So the cancer that happened a little bit at young age is because of very, very rare. It was a young cell, should not do a mistake, but the frequency of replication is so high that you get some cancers. Why cancers? The highest incidence is that 40 to 65, 70, because you're old enough for the cell to do a mistake. You still replicate. You're still young enough to replicate. This is why cancer starts there. Cancer doesn't start at 85 because the cells are not replicating. They're just too old to replicate.
Okay, so your diet. I got to get this question in about the diet, about the fasting, because now I'm thinking, okay, maybe I can do this. But one of the benefits that you talk about on the site about your relationship with food changes, and I'm guessing that a lot of people listening, women especially, are having this question in their mind, like, um, it says you let go of mindless eating. Really? Like, because I'm going to be eating what you gave me for 4 or 5 days, all of a sudden these voices in my head are going to stop saying, I
Yeah.
want a hot dog, or I want a piece of sugar,
Well,
or I want, like, all the stuff that goes on. How am I shifting that relationship so quickly?
yeah, that's a fantastic question. So, Prolon is the we talked a lot about fasting mimicking diet. The name is Prolon for those who want to check it. Prolon is the 5-day fasting mimicking diet, has 5 benefits. Benefits number one is we talk about the weight loss, right? You lose a lot of weight doing it. Benefits number two is the change in relationship with food. We hear this all the time. And just to help our audience understand, we have 73% of our consumers are women, and most of them are above age 40 and 50, and a super high spike in the 60s. And so this is the core audience that is responding to these questionnaires and talking about this. I always say 5 days is short enough for people to complete. We have a 91% completion rate, because the problem with diets is people fail on them because they're every day. What people love about Prolon, it's just 5 days. So 91% of people can complete a 5 day of anything practically, but it's long enough to start change your behavior, right? And you're going to see that, and it's Kathy, it's part of it is I spent 5 days. A lot of people would say, I cannot believe that I can spend 5 days first on a plant-based, 100% plant-based. Number two, volumes. Once you start getting the smaller volumes, your stomach doesn't call for bigger volumes that get adjusted to this. Number three, you're not eating late. The worst thing, people philosoph a lot about weight loss, but it goes back to a few things. And one of the most important thing is not eating late and heavy at night. That's the worst thing you can do. And if you want to lose weight, still enjoy your food. Eat your crappy food a little bit in the morning. You'll do much better than eating it at night. In the morning, what you eat, you catalyze it. You're moving. What you eat at night, you store it, right? So a lot of people start saying, I used to snack a little bit late at night. I'm stressed. I'm preparing my work for next day, or I'm watching Netflix and I snacked on my book. When you do Prolon 5 nights or 4 nights, if you want, of I'm eating my dinner soups, I'm getting my snacks with it. I feel light. I feel healthy. I can do it. The thought that you can succeed. Because every time you say diet, people are fearful, and people are waiting for the day they're going to stop it. So they're going to, we call the learned helplessness, where it's a failure. Every time you say, I'm starting a diet on Monday, you're going to fail someday. When you do Prolon, there's no failure, because I'm doing 5 days.
5 days.
Going back to my food. So it starts, we call it tiny wins. It's a big science from BJ Fogg at Stanford. The tiny wins. You know what? The first time you do is like, hey, I'm pretty happy. I lost a lot of weight. I feel energetic because it's rejuvenation. I feel very empowered, and I feel that I did achieve something. After a few days, you're going to go back to your pizzas, etc. But then you come back to it. So you want a little bit, and your body became metabolically flexible. This is very important. It's like going to the gym. The first time is difficult, but then you start liking it, and then it becomes your routine. And so it's very important that when you repeat it, and we recommend to do it 3 times a year, that's it. There's very
That's
few
all?
there's very
Wow.
few CEOs of any company will tell you do my product just 3 times. Just give me 15 days out of your 365
Wow.
days. That's all what I need from you. Just do Prolon. For people listening to us, go subscribe for it just 3 times. Once every quarter. And we showed that it rejuvenates the cells if you do it 3 times a year, and it reverse your bioage by 2.5 years. This we
Wow.
published in Nature, #1 science journal of the world. We just published that 5 months ago in February.
Wow. If I could, I could set the intention to do a 5 day program pretty much
Three
on it,
times. Yeah,
right?
on anything. This is what I'm
Easily.
saying.
But if I ate your Prolon diet for 5 days and I felt like it showed me how to not eat meat as much, to be comfortable and happy and fulfilled
Yes.
and satiated on that, that would be a huge shift for me. That would be
100%. And that's the inspiration, right? So if it's long, you get overwhelmed, you go back to your meat. If it's short, it's not going to change your behavior. It's the right intervention to help you say, you know what, I can succeed. And let me try a second time. Let me try a third time. And
yeah.
this is exactly what what we focus on. And I want to continue benefit 3, 4, and 5. You're going to like number 3. I mean, it's the cellular rejuvenation and the reverse of aging. We mentioned that 2.5 years when you do 3 times. Number 4 is, I mean, we're not talking about the metabolic benefits, right? Blood pressure, blood sugar. We just published 2 articles, one coming from Leiden, the biggest health system in Holland, one from Charité in Germany. It's showing that every 6 months, so you're doing the 5 days, month 1, 5 days only, month 1, 5 days, month 2, 5 days, month 3, 5 days, month 4, for diabetic patients. So diabetic patients, we tell them do it once every month up until you start reducing your medication. So we're seeing that in 6 months, that's 30 days in total, you're decreasing the dose of medication where you're taking 1 full medication off as a diabetic patient.
What about cholesterol?
Cholesterol, blood pressure, blood sugar.
It'll all come
These
down.
are, sorry,
They'll all come down.
they'll come down.
Oh my
So,
God.
so obviously, right? So why blood sugar is up? Because overeating, insulin resistance, fat accumulation. So
Exactly.
think about it. What's the solution? What's the best, fastest way to reverse an overeating situation? Think about it. Fasting. Right? Think about
Yeah,
it.
don't eat
It's
sugar.
like, right? It's like, oh, I got diabetes and I got blood pressure because I ate over the last 3 decades. I stored a lot of it in fat, and then I developed insulin resistance. And now my body doesn't know how to cope with blood sugar because the liver, the pancreas does not produce insulin, and fat is making me insulin resistant. What is the solution for overeating? It's not eating. But it's so difficult not to eat. And we made it easy. We're giving you food that's making your body think you're not eating. So you're melting the fat pretty fast. When you melt the
I
fat
love
fast,
it.
you did it. You see, it's like medicine is so distorted, right? It's like, no, you got to take your pills. And none of the pills reverse your diabetes. They're just moving sugar from the blood to the cells, and they're accelerating. Let's explore the third bomb in here. Most of the drugs for diabetes, they just accelerate the disease. They move sugar. They don't disappear. Sugar doesn't disappear in the blood. It just goes from the blood to the cells, right? The insulin sensitizers or insulin secretors. When the sugar goes from the blood to the cells, the excess sugar is what happened to it, gets stored into fat. And then more fat is more insulin resistance. Therefore, you need a higher dose, right? Go ask 100 doctors, what do you do with a diabetic patient? Say, well, I put him on the meds, I get him controlled. In 2 years, we'll add another med. Then we'll go to injectables, GLP-1. Then we go to insulin when we destroy their pancreas. I'm like, how about let them stop eating, and then fat melts and no insulin resistance and no need for your drugs.
Right. Fat melts
So-
instead of muscle, just easily.
Yes.
Yeah, what you were saying about protein earlier, so could that be a cause for blood sugar spiking?
Meaning being on a protein diet?
Eating too much protein, yeah.
No, protein goes to a different receptor called the TOR.
Right.
But within the cell, they're a little bit crossing. This is why now high protein diet or high carb diets, they're leading to the same end diseases, right?
Right.
We're
Yeah.
calling Alzheimer's type 3 diabetes now because the disease of pushing the cells to grow and age. It's accelerated aging.
Okay.
What is all this doing? This is why I go back and I tell you fasting and calorie restriction
Yeah.
are the key secrets of the centenarians. They were slowing down their age. They're not boosting their aging. It's all about aging. My biggest aha moment that had me leave medicine and leave everything is food is accelerating aging, and aging is the mother of all the 4 big killers. 90% of us in the US,
Yeah.
we're going to die out of cardiovascular, cancer, Alzheimer's, and diabetes.
Wow.
Right? Do you get diabetes type 2 at age 20? No. Do you get Alzheimer's at age 22? No. Do you get your first heart attack at age 17? No. You get them at later stage of life. So we surrender to aging. We're like, okay, we're going to age. And then, oh, my father is old. He got Alzheimer's. My mom is old. She got a heart attack. How about we treat old? How about we treat aging? And how to treat aging? You can slow down aging by eating less carbs and less proteins and spiking less your insulin and IGF. And you can temporarily reverse it by the fasting mimicking diet because you create a stress on the cells. They think there's an existential threat, and therefore they rejuvenate. They practice autophagy. Nobel Prize winner in medicine, 2016. They're rejuvenating, and then they're going biologically a bit younger. So
Wow.
Prolon reverses your bioage, and then you don't eat a very heavy meat and carb diet in between so that you don't accelerate your age.
Wow.
Mind blown.
Yeah, absolutely. This is awesome.
And go study the centenarians, right?
Right,
What
right, yeah,
what are they doing? Why
Yeah.
Okinawa and Japan? Because complex carb plus fish.
Yeah.
Why Sardinia in Italy? Because fish plus legumes and vegetable.
Mhm.
Right? Like it shouldn't be a secret, but because nutrition is managed mainly by businesses, they want you to eat the proteins, they want you to eat their
100%.
Yeah,
formulation, they
of
want you
course.
to,
Yeah, yeah,
that's the
yeah,
problem.
yeah.
Well, I'm so
Yeah,
excited, happy that we talked to you. I feel differently about it. That book is on my list next.
me
I'd love
too.
to
Yeah,
read
we'll put that in our show notes and we'll put all your information there because I think
for
this is
sure.
really helpful for people. And I have one other thing. I noticed on your website, it says that you have fasting coaches for people.
Yes.
Is that a way to
Longevity
help
coaches,
through this?
longevity coaches.
Longevity coaches, I'm sorry. Okay.
So what we did in partnership with USC, we developed our founder, Walter Longo. He developed the first ever, and is still the only longevity nutrition track. So the dietitians that graduate out of USC, they graduate out of a longevity nutrition track.
Hmm.
Because unfortunately, if you ask today, 80% of dietitians say, oh, you should eat protein. So a high protein diet. I mean, no. It's just because they're all thinking diabetes. The most prevalent disease is obesity and diabetes. Okay,
Hmm.
they just go
Yeah,
on
yeah.
proteins. But
That's
how
right.
about cancer? How about aging? How about, you're feeding the body to grow and accelerate your aging? So our founder, Walter Longo, partnered with US. I mean, he's the head of the Longevity Institute there, and they
Yeah.
created the first ever longevity nutrition track. And the summary of that is in this book, The Longevity Diet.
Great. Okay.
And so we hire from that program, and our coaches and dietitians are trained into longevity, what you should eat to live a healthy,
Great.
long life.
That's great. That's so helpful for our
Awesome.
listeners because there's so much out there and they don't always know what's right.
Yeah.
So this is really awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm
And
excited.
I'm very passionate about true science. So for those listening here today, because everyone is bombarded by misinformation, go to the website of Prolon Life or to L-Nutra, the company. There's a science section. You click on it. All the articles, where the only company will tell you this is the clinical trial. Read it and learn from it. And we do those in partnership with 18 universities, right? You don't hear, I don't want to drop names, the big nutrition companies partnering with any hospital medical system because they just get exposed.
Yeah.
So we have Stanford, you have USC, UCLA, University of Indiana, University of Palermo, University of
Wow.
Genoa. We do all the clinical trials there, not in our closed doors. Over there, they're all randomized, IRB approved, and this is why
Wow.
they make it to the top journals in the world.
It's
Wow.
impressive.
That's
Very
awesome.
impressive.
Yeah.
Congratulations. That's
Yes.
amazing success.
Yeah.
Well, this is a company for the world. I just want to conclude with one comment. The founder, Walter, that I mentioned, just for people to understand, we're not doing marketing here. He owns 42% of the company still, and it's all donated. So he pre-donates all his shares,
Mhm.
and is not taking any dollar for profit. We're not, paying any dividends to anyone. They're just going into donation to the Create Cures Foundation. So he donates it to the Create Cures Foundation.
Wow.
And the foundation is doing more, it has clinics to help people and doing more trials on
Wow.
longevity.
Well, that makes two old yogis really happy, right,
Yes, it
Chris?
does. Because that's a lot of our philosophy. So yeah.
And we do, when you go to the Prolon website, we do have a longevity products. We have longevity proteins to not spike IGF. We don't have time to talk about all this, but the food in
Interesting.
between the
Okay.
Prolons, in between the 5 days, we have we're trying to replace most meals with meals that do not spike insulin and IGF to keep you, to slow down aging even between those. And especially if your audience is women after age 60, so after menopause, the longevity protein, look it up. It's called the L protein.
Okay.
It's important for
Good.
me as a doctor to mention this today. The
Okay.
L-DASH protein is an important product, fully vegan, has 21 minerals and vitamins, and has extra virgin olive oil. So it's a longevity mini meal that you can take and to not spike your insulin or IGF and to help the body nourish the muscle without paying the price on longevity.
Awesome.
Right. That's awesome. I think perhaps sometime in the future, maybe we can come back because I think our folks listening
When
in.
he launches that thing he was talking about, for sure. That's
Yeah.
what groundbreaking.
Yes.
That would be fun.
Yeah, that'd be great.
Thank you
Well,
for joining us today. That's amazing.
Yeah.
appreciate you and thank you very much.
It's going to
To the
help our
next one.
listeners. Thank you.
Bye.